right, let's do this. Joining me now, Congressman Michael Guest. Welcome to the Alec Show.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. I know you guys are you just had the hearing and about what has happened to our border here and what has happened with this invasion to our country. So I want to just say right off the gate, the Democrats were gaslighting us and telling us that, oh, because the Republicans didn't want to sign this protect the border bill, whatever nonsense they had, that's why the border wasn't secure. But we find out as soon as President Donald Trump came in there, he stopped it almost completely. So we didn't need to have any of that stuff. We just needed to have another president. And we now know that they purposely invaded this country.
You're exactly right. Throughout the entire hearing, they kept talking about the failed bipartisan border bill that never passed anywhere, never passed the Senate, never made it over to the House. It was a bill that was only in theory and never came to fruition. And they blamed President Trump for killing legislation when he was nothing more than a candidate. But you're right. We saw when the president was sworn in on January 20th, we didn't need new legislation to secure the border. We just needed a new president. And President Trump, using existing authority, has done amazing work on the border in the last 2 months alone. Encounters have dropped more than 90%. The border as secure as it has been in decades. And all of that credit goes to Donald Trump and his administration.
Now, had they lost, had President Trump lost, they never would have had to secure the border. We would still be getting invaded, and they'd still be saying, "Oh, Donald Trump didn't want to secure the border. That's why they killed that bill." And now we have the proof. So, Congressman, the big question is what they did, in my opinion, is a complete act of treason. They purposely, and I can only imagine what it must be like for these angel parents that have to watch what's happening now and see how easy it is to stop the border, that it could have been done at any time during the Biden administration. They chose not to do it. They allowed this to happen. So not only did they use it as a tool to redistrict these neighborhoods to try to keep them in power, but they also flooded these dangerous criminals into these neighborhoods that took the lives of innocent Americans.
You're right. What happened was not by happenstance. It wasn't accidental that the border got in the condition. It was calculated. And those calculated acts began on day one. When President Biden was sworn into office on day one. If you remember, he issued executive orders undoing the Remain in Mexico policy. He stopped wall construction. We know that he expanded the CBP-1 app outside of its original intent to allow over 1 million immigrants to fly directly into the country. His use of NGOs. He basically established a pipeline, if you will, from Central and South America coming into the United States. And so those were the things that we tried to highlight at this hearing yesterday for new members of the committee, for people who had not been here, who had not served in Congress over the previous 4 years. It is important that they understood how we got to the position that we were in just 2 or 3 months ago, and for them to see the dramatic change that we've seen since President Trump has taken over. He has reinstated Remain in Mexico. He has reinforced the border with our military to make sure that we once again have operational control. And again, the things that he has done in a short period of time can be described to me as nothing less than amazing.
Yeah, right on with that. I couldn't agree with you more. But the thing is, too, Congressman, that we have you have people sitting in prison right now for 30 years that didn't have as much evidence against them as we have against the Biden family, against the Alejandro Mayorkas. We have all of this evidence that we could show that say, hey, look, these people intentionally invaded our country with these illegal immigrants. And so are these hearings, what everyone wants to know, we know we have the hearings, we know we have the investigations. Everybody wants to see the prosecutions, the arrests, and the prison sentences. So due to these hearings, is this something we see that's going to happen? Will there be charges? Is this going to lead to prosecutions?
Our job is to conduct oversight. And so that's what we're doing. We're conducting the oversight. We're putting the information out there in the public domain. So then people within the Department of Justice can take the information that we've produced, take the testimony, and then they can ultimately decide whether or not they feel like this is a matter for their agency to pursue. If you remember, the Homeland Security Committee, we actually impeached Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security. We built up for months and months. We had hearings and we built a case against Secretary Mayorkas. We were able to get a vote first out of the committee to impeach him, later out of the House. And we saw that once those charges were sent to the Senate, we saw at that point Schumer basically covered that up. He summarily dismissed that without allowing the House to present any evidence, to hold any hearings. Did not require any response from Secretary at that time Mayorkas to defend himself. And so the House has repeatedly, since day one, done everything within our power to aggressively put out information to the public. And I hope that that's one of the things that we not only accomplished through this hearing, but that we continue to highlight over the next 2 to 4 years under the Trump administration, because we don't want the Biden administration or the prior Biden administration, their actions to be swept under the rug. We want to continue to make sure that this information is out there. It remains in the forefront because you're right. We have families who suffered. We have American citizens who have been killed, who have been raped, who have been the victim of robbery, the victim of assault. We've seen the flood of fentanyl come across the border. We've seen the transnational organizations continue to grow in their illegal activity. None of this had to happen. All of this was preventable, except for the actions of the prior administration not only allowed this to happen, but I believe encouraged this to happen.
Well, I agree with you, and from what you guys are uncovering, what you guys are investigating with the hearings, what has been the pushback, if any, from the Democrat? What is the excuse? Like, I've never heard the reason from the Democrats say, yes, we did we did allow all these immigrants. Here's the reason why we did it. What is the excuse? Do they have any kind of and what is their knock on the hearings? What is their pushback, if any?
Their pushback at this point is, we don't need to look back. We only need to look forward. And I had to remind them of the old adage, those individuals who are not familiar with history are doomed to repeat it. And so, they want to completely turn the page. They want to start a new chapter. They want to attack the Trump administration based on his aggressive policies involving the deportation of people who are illegally in the country. One of the defense witnesses, or the witnesses on behalf of the Democrat, I asked him about the 1.5 million final orders of removal, where individuals had been through the immigration courts. Their claims for asylum had been denied. I asked the defense witness, should those individuals be apprehended and returned to their country of origin? And his response was somewhat shocking. He said, it depends. So they are unable to formulate a real pushback on what happened. We saw in the election how unpopular the policies of open border, how unpopular the policies of the Biden-Harris administration were in November. And so they are still, if you will, kind of caught off guard, trying to formulate how they're going to push back against the successful actions of President Trump and those people that he's put in place.
And you say they want to, let's look forward. The way they want to move forward is to try to keep all the people that they brought here and not get rid of them, because it's like you see that what's happening with the activist judges that we have that are getting in there. And again, I can only imagine what this must look like through the eyes of like the angel parents that we have in this country, or the angel families that we have, that are seeing the Democrats actively try to stop President Donald Trump from deporting these violent criminals. I mean, you've seen the way that they were received in El Salvador there. I mean, these people were brought in with heavily armed guards, chained to each other. I mean, they don't trust these, because these are dangerous people that were allowed into our country. And now you have the Biden administration saying, I'm not the Biden administration, I'm sorry. You have the Democrats and these activist judges saying, no, the president is not allowed to do them. And they're trying to play God with the Constitution and stop them from saving more American lives here.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, I believe what they're trying to do is they're trying to stack congressional districts so that those districts will now, for this time into perpetuity, be Democrat-leaning districts, and that they can control the majority of the United States House of Representatives. I believe this was calculated. I believe that there is a political means to what happened. I believe that the prior administration did not care about the carnage and the suffering of the American people. They believe that the ends justified the means. And so if there were innocent American citizens who were harmed or injured at the hands of illegal immigrants who had been allowed into the country, and not only allowed in the country, but I believe encouraged to come into the country, they were willing to sacrifice those injuries for political gain. And so now we see that the Democrats are now turning their fire, if you will, their focus on the administration to try to prevent them from deporting the over 9 million illegal immigrants who flooded the country over the last 4 years. even to the point of those immigrants who have finalized their proceedings in the administration or in the immigration court where there are final orders of removal, they cannot even agree that those individuals should be removed. And so it's no longer an argument of due process. It's what can we do to throw up one roadblock after another roadblock to keep these people in the country. And again, I believe ultimately the goal is so that they can reshape the political maps of the House of Representatives so that they can seek to maintain a majority or to gain a majority and make it impossible for Republicans to, at least in the near term, be able to compete against that.
There's no question it's a stall game right now. Everything is to try to stall till the midterms is really what I think the goal is right now for them, is to do everything to slow it down until they can get to their midterms, and then they could try to take over the House and really just put the brakes on President Donald Trump's agenda. So it seems like that's the game plan. You would expect them to be going that direction. For us to counter that, though, is going to take some serious effort. And just to your point there, too, your colleague, Congressman Eli Crane, was playing that video showing you have elected officials openly admitting that they're trying to help redistrict based on packing their neighborhoods with these illegal aliens. So it's not like this is some secret that they're trying to do. This stuff is all out in the open. And part of the hearings, is this some of the things that you guys are uncovering as well? Evidence that this is exactly what the game plan was to redistrict some of these neighborhoods?
Well, it's hard for us to get particularly the Democrat witnesses to come out and admit to their motivation behind much of this. And so, again, what we're doing and what we have focused on, at least in the initial hearing, and I believe some of the hearings going forward, is making sure that we are highlighting those decisions of the administration, the prior administration, the Biden administration, that created this unprecedented crisis. This was not something that they accidentally fell into. They did not accidentally allow 9 to 10 million illegal immigrants into the country. They encouraged that. They encouraged these sanctuary cities to allow these immigrants to move into those locations. They made it financially feasible for that to happen by much of the cost being picked up by the federal government. And so, we are going to make sure that we are not going to allow this to be swept under the rug. We're going to do our best to make sure that the information is public and hope that the Department of Justice or others, if they find criminal wrongdoings, will hold people responsible for their actions.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And this just goes to show, Congressman, why it's so important to try to codify some of these executive orders from President Donald Trump. Just because, I mean, his first term, he had like 220 executive orders. Not one was codified. Then as soon as Biden got in there, he undid everything that Trump did at the border and opened it wide open. So it's like, if we don't get some of these things locked in, made into law, then, the next Democrat in there is just going to reopen the border again.
You're exactly right. When President Biden took office, he inherited one of the most secure borders in our nation's history. We saw very quickly how that pendulum swung in the other direction. And how we had at one time, on any 1 month, we would have well over 200,000 immigrants flooding across. There was 1 month in particular during the Biden administration that was close to 350,000 illegal immigrants coming in a single month. And now we have seen that President Trump has reversed that. In February, there were just over 11,000. We had a witness who testified at the hearing yesterday. He was from the Del Rio sector. He testified in the sector where he served as a Border Patrol agent. On one given day, when President Biden was in office, they had 15,000 immigrants in one day in a single sector. And now we see that number has dried up to 11,000 immigrants across the entire southwest border. And so, we had the policies in place, the gaslighting by the Democrats, that we had to have this bipartisan bill, that the president had to have more authorities if he was going to be able to secure the border, were nothing more than just lies to the American people. Those lies were something that you would see people like Secretary Mayorkas when he would come to Congress and testify. He repeatedly tell the House of Representatives and the Committee on Homeland Security that the border was secured, that we had operational control at a time in which the numbers were looking at that was the complete opposite. And so it is a breath of fresh air to have an administration now who will tell the truth, that are willing to share with the committee the real numbers, to talk about what's going on. But you're right. Now it is time for us to begin to codify those changes that President Trump has put in place by executive order, so that when President Trump is no longer in office 4 years from now, that it will be much more difficult for anyone to go back to the failed policies that we've seen under the Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah, well said, Congressman. I know I'm up against the clock here. Keep doing the investigating. Last thing, what's coming up? Give me the calendar here. What's the next steps there for the committee?
As the committee, we're going to be are going to be working to continue to focus on what happened before. We're going to be seeking to make sure that we introduce legislation, probably very similar to HR2 that we saw last Congress, which passed the House, that would allow for additional resources, additional Border Patrol agents, additional investment in technology. We want to codify Remain in Mexico. We want to make sure that we are appropriating funds to pay our Border Patrol agents the pay that they need and deserve, that we're putting forth appropriations for wall construction and for additional technology investments at both our ports of entry and along the southwest border. And so those are going to be the things that we're going to be focused on, as well as we're going to focus on the cartels and what we can do as a Committee on Homeland Security to push back against the damage and destruction that the cartels have caused in our country.
Yeah, good stuff. There's a whole nother topic we didn't even get into, was the cartels too. So much to go along with this. Congressman Michael Guest, I hope you'll come back and join me again. Thanks so much for giving me a few minutes of your time today on the Alec Show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.